So my studio is in my garage. It takes up about 2/3 of the garage. I think you guys saw the slideshow of some of the previous versions of my studio. I have to massively overhaul the organization of my studio just about every year because when I work, I tend to get pretty messy and the place does not look as organized as paint and paper and scissors and equipment, and everything is everywhere. And that can go on for, I don't know, 8 to 9 months. And then at some point I'm like, you know what? I can't function in this space. I got to clean up. So this is the clean version of my studio. So I'm just going to start on this side of so here's my garage door here. I'm just going to start on this side of things and show you what I got going on here. So you're going to see a mixture of all the different things that I do in here. One is painting, obviously, and up here on this shelf, you can see some, these are framed canvases. They're still in their wrapping. I leave them in there so they don't get covered in dust. And I have quite a few of those for when I'm working. This is a series of wood panels that I've started but I haven't finished on. This is also an unfinished work, and these are, you see some frames there, and then some canvases that are still wrapped up. So that's just a storage shelf. This little section here is my jewelry section. I think some of you know that I've been getting into making jewelry and learning how to bead and things like that. And this is my storage for this. I have some of my beads are in these little screw top containers. And then I just have this little shelf here with these wire hooks on it, and I hang my completed pieces there. That's just a bin of stuff. This is more jewelry in these drawers here. These are old earrings that I just haven't sold yet or gotten around to putting up on Etsy or anything like that. Bead storage. In here is more beads in here. And then I've got, these are largely gemstones and pearls. This is just a random assortment of things. This one is my favorite. It looks like candy. It's just a whole lot of beads in many different colors. Those colors make me happy. And then there's just some organized bins of things in there. This is just a little shelf where I keep some of my own sort of personal mementos and inspiration type pieces. This whole desk here that you see, that's a butcher block countertop. And on top of wooden sawhorses. So my husband just built this for me this summer, and it's really wonderful. It's a really sturdy work surface, and it feels really good to work on a space like that. I am terrible about keeping up with my paintbrushes, so I've got 3 jars of water here, and I tend to use one first and do the super dirty rinse, and then a medium rinse, and then hopefully if my brushes are coming out clear at the end, then the sort of rinsing is done. But I don't have great habits with that. I try to keep up with it, but man, I've spent a lot of money on paintbrushes. Those are just some painting trays. This is a caddy with a whole bunch of different kinds of tools that I need at various times. And there's wooden toothpicks, sandpaper, there's all sorts of things in here, markers. I do try to make sure that I label some of my drawers and bins so I don't forget what's in there. For instance, I've got in here, I've got this handy little thing that I use all the time. It's for scraping paint off of hard surfaces. I use it pretty often to get ink off of glass when I'm doing printmaking. So I've got that marked. Erasers. This is a little paint tube roller. You can get these at Sally Beauty Supply. Actually, they make them for rolling up tubes of hair color, but it works great for metal tubes of paint too. Oops, sorry. Okay, so yeah, quite a few things in there. These are some little shrine items that I'm working on. So I'm using a Dremel tool and iron or tin snips to pull these things apart and flatten them out, and then I'll use them for a project. So this is another bead storage bin here on the right. And these are all jewelry making tools, but I end up using them a lot for all sorts of things. Actually, there's clamps, and these are called rosary pliers. various kinds of things in here. Crimping tool, but anyways, they're super multifunctional and I use them for a lot of different things. Here, this is some of my both metalworking and Dremel equipment. So that's my Dremel tool that I use for all sorts of things. That's a butane torch, an X-Acto. Actually, that's both. Those are both. No, wait, that's an X-Acto set and that's a compass set. My soldering stuff is up here on top, and then this is a magical assortment of markers that I actually fear a lot of them are dried out right now. I had a rough year last year with a friend who got sick, and so I haven't really been working as much as I'd like to, or much as I normally do, and so some of these things might be a little bit dried out. But anyways, I store them sort of tipped up on the side like this, and then every month or so I rotate this bin on its sides so that the markers hopefully don't get as dried out. And then here I've got tons and tons of brushes and tools and implements. Like I said, I'm really bad about taking care of my brushes, and so fairly often I end up with brushes that, well, that's actually a pretty decent brush. It's stiff, but I've got a bunch of brushes in here that you can't even bend the bristles anymore because I didn't rinse them well enough and I left them sitting out, which is terrible. That's a very bad habit. It's an expensive habit. But there's tons of brushes here. This right here, so ignore that bin on the right, that's just some stuff that I have out for repairing stuff around the house. But this is all paper, big sheets of paper. You guys know I like to work with mixed media, and paper is one of my favorite things to use. These big giant pieces of paper are really getting hard for me to store, and a couple of years ago I went down to Anchorage to Blaine's Art Supply and realized that they were selling paper in this state. So they were hanging it on, these clipped hanging clothes hangers and then on a rack. And I thought, I should just do that in my studio. So these big pieces of paper have a home. It's easy for me to sort through them, and they're not taking up quite as much space as they normally would if they were just sitting out on a table like that one. This is a stack, now there are lots of these around my house, of both a mix of completed paintings and incompleted paintings, and I keep them down here because most likely I'm still going to continue working on them, or they're candidates for me to completely paint over them. Okay, so this, sorry, it's a little washed out here. Oh, and I share my garage with a cat litter box and bicycles and all my son's skiing equipment. I wish that I had this entire place to myself, but I have to share it, so that's okay. So this is a wide variety of paint. Acrylic paint, I have oil in a drawer down here. I'll have to show you that here in just a second. This is also a paint rolling tube. I only have one hand here because I'm recording, but you slide the end of the tube in here and then use this to roll it up. I'm not super crazy about this version of it. I actually prefer the one that is made out of black plastic. This one, for whatever reason, doesn't really grip the tubes as well as I'd like for it to. Most of this paint I got from eBay. So if you use eBay, be sure to use search phrases like lot of golden paint, LOT. So they sell things in lots, and some of this paint I got like, I don't know, 50 tubes for $120 or something absurd like that. And most of them are golden paints, which if you're familiar with that particular brand, it's pretty expensive. So that was quite the steal of a deal. Similarly with these, I found these on eBay for really inexpensive, not very much of a cost. I have tons of mediums here, grounds, mediums, varnishes, all sorts of things. And then here I've got some acrylic inks, which I use quite a bit, and these liquid style golden paints here and then here. And these you can actually refill markers with those. So even if my paints are dried out, I can replace the tip and refill the markers with this paint. So that's pretty useful. I have a lot of these little plastic, these are like salad dressing containers, but they're great for mixing and storing acrylic paint. So I buy those from like the grocery store. I used to get them from Sam's, but now Costco, I'm pretty sure has them. So this whole thing, I got this little contraption here from Fred Meyers. You'll notice that it's on wheels, and that's super helpful. Because when I rearrange things and move things around, I have to be able to move this really easily. So there's more paint, more mediums. In here I have tons of additional types of paint and varnishes and spray paints. These are oil pastels, and this is an old watercolor set that my mom gave me. And there's these crayons here. And then for these drawers, this is kind of a candy store here too. So these are all sorts of weird, strange paints that I don't use all that often. As you can see, I probably need to shake that one up. But I do use them occasionally, some oil sticks in there. And then this is my oil paint collection here. Oil paint will stay for a long time. So some of these I haven't used in a long time, but it's amazing how long oil paints last in these tubes. So you can see that I've got them arranged by color here. And then this is printmaking materials. I really so love doing printmaking. I wish I had more space here to do it and a big giant press. But I've got good inks back here and that sort of thing. This is just sort of a random assortment. Glue gun. These are canvas pliers. If you've ever taken a painting class and you had to stretch your own canvases, you know what those are for. And then here I've got clay making material. I sometimes make small little clay pieces that I incorporate into my paintings or into jewelry. Okay, so this thing here, also on wheels. This is a pretty big easel. It actually lays down flat, and it's incredibly useful when I'm working on big pieces here. So that's just regular house paint. I don't use that in my artwork, but I do use it to repaint things, items in my house, rooms in my house. I'm gonna start running out of batteries here, guys. So I'm gonna zip through the rest of this and then just make more videos and explain more as you ask questions. So this is a flat file storage. I've got my own prints in here, plus also the artwork of other artists as well. Works on paper in here, and then prints that are actually bagged and ready. Well, some of them are bagged and ready to go, and that sort of thing. And so these are just that mix of new and working canvases, pencils, tons and tons of paper. It's one of my favorite mixed media articles to use. I have most things when I do my cutouts, I have those labeled. So I've got a bin full of animals, people, objects, flowers. And then these little boxes are full of various types of mixed media, tape here, washi tape, and then these little wooden things that I use for a variety of things. This is a mix of things that I'm working on and paper that I might use for cutouts. There's all sorts of things in here. If somebody wants to have me sort of look through here as though you were here, like rummaging through my stuff, I'm happy to go through that and show you. I use this type of paper for backgrounds fairly often. These are, what do you call it, patterns for making clothes. That's just tissue paper for wrapping, paper, scissors. Sorry about all the noise. I live in a noisy neighborhood. This is Golden Paints color charts. When I'm in the middle of working on paintings, it's a really wonderful thing to have right there because it helps me to be able to actually see what the paint's going to look like when I lay it down. Because sometimes you can sort of forget, especially like among all the yellows, what exactly the yellows look like. Various things here. This is a bunch of stuff that goes with my Cricut machine, which I use to make my cutouts occasionally. I can't recommend having your own toolbox enough if you are, you know, an artist similar to myself working in a similar style media. I always have everything that I absolutely need to wire the back of my paintings and to hang things. So I've got tons of these D-rings. I've got plenty of plastic coated wire to use on the back. I've got all sorts of things that can be used to actually hang items. These are my favorites for sort of temporary hanging items. Screws for the D-rings, always all sorts of things in there. And then in here, I've got more hanging materials and then just my standard set of tools. My family is under direct orders to never touch this toolbox. It is mine. because God knows if you try to share a toolbox, that's going to end in disaster. And then of course I've got tons of books that I'm always cutting out of. I cut lots of images out of books fairly often. This whole shelf, I can show people the insides of those if you want to see them too. Those are all old sketchbooks and idea books. These are all small, unfinished pieces of work. Actually, some of them might be finished, but I'm still sort of thinking about them or mulling them over. Let's see where a finished piece is. Well, I started that one out and then I changed it, so that was kind of in the middle. I've got old linoleum print blocks that I've painted here, paper and silk flowers. This is a bunch of porcupine quills that a student gave me a while back. These are just more mixed media materials here. Old beads. When I buy canvases or frames, they often come with these little corners on them. Hang on to these, because when you transport a bunch of work to a gallery or something, you're really going to want access to these so that you don't bang up your own paintings. So I've been hanging on to these for years. And then I've got old rags and stuff that I use. And then here's my second easel with a giant painting on it that I'm working on right now, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. This is that double-sided sequined fabric. I'm not sure if I'm going to use that or not on this. Anyways, that's a really quick run through my studio. So what I'm hoping is that there's something here that one of you wants to know more about. Feel free to ask the question in the classroom, the Google Classroom comments section where I'm posting this video and your assignment for this week. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. Take care. See you later.